What would you do if you found a 9-year-old girl scrubbing floors in your billion-dollar headquarters at 2 a.m.? We all think we know what poverty looks like in America. We see the statistics, watch the news, maybe even donate to charity. But what if I told you the most brilliant mind in business was hidden in the shadows of our broken system, working 3 jobs just to keep her dying grandmother alive? Joshua Grant thought he had life figured out. $4.2 billion, 127 luxury hotels, a corner office on the 58th floor where he'd built an empire from nothing. This CEO spent 294 nights a year sleeping in his headquarters, isolated from the world below. Until one November night changed everything. This workaholic billionaire thought he had seen it all, until one whispered confession from a child janitor shattered his entire world. What she told him next exposed a truth so devastating about America's foster care system that it would force him to risk everything he'd built. What she told him next will change how you see success forever. Smash that like button if you believe every child deserves a fighting chance, because this story will restore your faith in humanity. To understand why finding Karen would break Joshua Grant so completely, you need to know how he became the loneliest billionaire in America. 54 years old. $4.2 billion. An empire that started with one bankrupt motel he bought during the 2008 recession for $37,000. Today, Horizon Hospitality Group owned 127 luxury properties across North America, each one a testament to his relentless drive. But success came at a cost most people never see. Joshua hadn't left his corporate headquarters for more than 24 hours in 3 years. Forbes documented his obsession in their 2023 profile: 294 nights annually sleeping in his executive suite. The building at 1800 Larimer Street wasn't just his office, it was his world. Sound-dampening marble floors, biometric security systems that required his palm print for elevator access above the 50th floor. Even his meals were delivered by a rotating staff who never spoke unless spoken to. His penthouse office felt more like a mausoleum than a workspace. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked downtown Denver, but Joshua rarely looked outside. The leather furniture cost more than most people's homes, yet nobody ever sat in the chairs across from his desk. Conference calls replaced human interaction. Digital signatures eliminated handshakes. Every system designed to minimize contact with the unpredictable mess of human emotion. Why? Because 12-year-old Joshua Grant learned the most brutal lesson a child can learn. His mother, Jennifer, had fought for 2 years to get him back from foster care after losing custody due to her addiction struggles. She'd completed every program, passed every drug test, attended every court hearing. The day before their scheduled reunification, she died from complications during what should have been routine surgery, a surgery delayed by bureaucratic red tape and insurance denials. Joshua never got to say goodbye, never got to go home. That broken promise from the system taught him that depending on others meant inevitable disappointment. So he built walls, financial walls, professional walls, emotional walls so high that even his own board of directors communicated through intermediaries. Horizon's employees called him the Ghost because he moved through the building without acknowledgement. Security guards tracked his movements, but nobody actually saw him. He existed in a carefully controlled environment where every variable was manageable, every outcome predictable. His apartment had never been lived in. His kitchen had never been used. His king-sized bed was for sleeping between midnight and 5 a.m. Nothing more. Work was safety. Control was survival. Solitude was protection. For 4 decades, this strategy worked perfectly. Joshua Grant had built the ultimate fortress against human pain. No relationships meant no betrayal. No trust meant no disappointment. No love meant no loss. But money can't buy what Joshua was missing most. November 7th, 2023, 2:15 a.m. Joshua sat hunched over quarterly reports when his computer screen flashed red. Security breach. 58th floor. His floor. Impossible. The biometric scanners required his palm print. The laser grid system had never failed in 8 years. Only 3 people in the world had access codes to his executive level, and all 3 were accounted for. He pulled up the security footage, expecting to find a system malfunction. Instead, he watched something that defied logic. A small figure moved through his office like a ghost. Not just any office, his private sanctuary. The person was tiny, methodical, and somehow completely invisible to every sensor designed to detect human movement. Joshua zoomed in, adjusted the contrast, and felt his breath catch. A child. A little girl with braided hair, wearing oversized janitorial coveralls rolled up at the ankles. But this wasn't random. She moved with surgical precision. While mopping the marble floors, she angled cleaning equipment to reflect the laser beams, creating blind spots in the security grid. She'd memorized the exact timing of the rotating cameras, disappearing from view at perfect intervals. When she reached his desk, she didn't just clean, she paused, reading the merger documents he'd left open. Reading them. Actually reading complex financial projections that seasoned executives struggled to understand. Joshua watched 3 weeks of footage in fast forward. Same girl, same time, same impossible infiltration. But she wasn't stealing. She was working, scrubbing floors with the dedication of someone whose life depended on it, while simultaneously absorbing information that could move stock markets. He had to see this for himself. The next night, Joshua stayed late on purpose. At exactly 12 a.m., he heard the soft whisper of cleaning supplies against marble. He waited, heart pounding harder than it had in years, until she appeared in his doorway. 9 years old, maybe younger. Dark eyes that seemed far too old for her face. She froze when she saw him, clutching an industrial mop like a shield. "Please don't call security," she whispered. Her voice carried an accent. "Maybe Wyoming, maybe Colorado mountain country. I know I'm not supposed to be here, but Mrs. Delgado said if I worked extra hours, I could help Grandma Rose pay for her medicine." Joshua stared at this child who had outsmarted his $4 million security system. "What's your name?" "Karen Bennett." She shifted nervously, but her eyes never left his face. "I've been watching you work. You're really good at numbers." "You've been watching me?" Karen nodded toward the merger documents on his desk. "That Westfield acquisition you're considering. The debt-to-equity ratio is off. Their quarterly projections don't account for seasonal hospitality fluctuations. You'll lose money on the Chicago and Detroit properties within 18 months. Joshua's mouth fell open. Those exact concerns had kept him awake for weeks. His financial advisors had missed the seasonal analysis completely. "How do you know that?" "I listen when the cleaning ladies talk about their hotel jobs. Summers are busy, winters are slow, except for ski resorts. Math is just math." Karen shrugged like she'd explained basic addition. "Your company focuses on city hotels, not mountain resorts. Westfield has too many properties in cold cities." This child had just delivered a market analysis that would save him millions. "Karen, how long have you been coming here?" 3 weeks. "I work downtown from midnight to 4 a.m., then I go to the convenience store until 7, then school starts at 8:30. 3 jobs. This 9-year-old was working 3 jobs. Why? Karen's composure cracked slightly. "Grandma Rose has cancer. The treatments cost $8,000 every month. Our insurance doesn't cover experimental medicine, and if she dies," her voice broke, "if she dies, they'll never let me get Lila back." Drop a comment if you're already amazed by Karen's intelligence, but wait until you hear why she was doing this. What Joshua discovered next would expose a dark truth about America that nobody talks about. Joshua pulled up a chair, the first time in years he'd sat across from another human being in his office. "Who's Lila?" Karen's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "My little sister, she's 8. We used to live in Wyoming with Mom and Dad until," her voice caught, "until the avalanche." The story poured out in whispered fragments. February 2022. A family ski trip to Jackson Hole that should have been a perfect weekend. Karen and Leela building snowmen while their parents hit the advanced slopes. Then the weather turned. The mountain rescue team found their parents 3 days later, buried under 12 feet of snow. Dad was a ranch foreman. Mom taught 2nd grade. They weren't rich, but we had enough. Karen stared at her hands. After the funeral, everyone said we'd go live with Grandma Rose in Denver. She raised Dad and loved us like her own daughters, but the state said she was too old. 63 was too old to raise 2 kids, even though she was the only family we had left. The bureaucratic nightmare began immediately. 3 different relatives applied for custody, an uncle in Montana, cousins in Colorado, even their former neighbor who'd helped with homework for years. All rejected for minor violations. Uncle Mike's ranch house was missing a 2nd bathroom. Cousin Janet's apartment was technically overcrowded with her own kids. The neighbor wasn't blood-related, so they split us up. Lila went to the Hendersons in Cheyenne because they specialized in medical needs children. That's code for kids with asthma or allergies who need extra attention. I got placed with the Kramers here in Denver. Karen's voice grew smaller as she continued. The Kramers treated her like unpaid help, cooking, cleaning, watching their biological children while they worked. When she asked about visiting Lila, they told her to be grateful for a roof over her head. I snuck out one night and took a Greyhound bus to Cheyenne. Found the Henderson house. Lila answered the door with a black eye and bruises on her arms. She was so thin. She looked like a skeleton. Karen's composure finally cracked. She whispered that Mr. Henderson hits her when she has asthma attacks. Says she's faking it for attention. Her inhaler was empty, and they wouldn't refill it because medication was too expensive. That night changed everything. Karen couldn't save Leela through the system. Caseworkers were overloaded, court dates were months away, and nobody believed children over adults. So she ran. I've been living in Grandma Rose's garage for 4 months. She's so sick from chemotherapy that she barely knows I'm there half the time. The experimental treatment is working, but insurance won't cover it. $8,000 every month, and she's already spent her life savings. Karen's underground economy was more sophisticated than most adults could manage. Midnight to 4 a.m. cleaning office buildings downtown, $11.50 per hour. 4:30 to 7 a.m. stocking shelves at a 24-hour convenience store, $9.25 per hour. 3 nights a week singing jazz standards at an underground club that didn't ask questions about age, $150 per night. I use fake IDs that cost me $200 each. Marisol at Rocky Mountain Cleanso thinks I'm her cousin's daughter from Mexico. The convenience store manager thinks I'm homeschooled and mature for my age. The jazz club owner just cares that customers tip well when I sing. 22 hours of cleaning work. 15 hours stocking shelves. 3 nights performing. Plus fighting legal battles to regain custody of Leela while attending school and caring for a dying grandmother. I've saved $7,153 so far. Grandma's next treatment is due in 6 days. Karen reached into her pocket and pulled out a crumpled envelope thick with cash. I counted every night to make sure it's real. Joshua stared at this child who had built a financial empire from nothing while navigating systems designed to crush her spirit. She'd found ways to earn money that most adults never imagined, all while maintaining perfect attendance at school and teaching herself advanced mathematics by reading his merger documents. The lawyers say if I can prove stable income and housing, they'll consider letting me petition for Leela's custody when I turn 16. That's 7 more years. But if Grandma Rose dies, Karen's voice broke completely. If she dies, they'll put me back in the system, and I'll never see Lila again. Karen looked up at this billionaire CEO and whispered, "Mr. Grant, I just need $847 more for Grandma Rose's treatment, and then maybe I can save Lila too." The room fell silent except for the hum of heating vents and Karen's quiet breathing. Joshua had heard heartbreaking stories before. Charity galas were full of them. But sitting across from this brilliant, broken child who had sacrificed everything for family, he felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. His heart was breaking. But Karen's story wasn't unique. It was just the tip of an iceberg that would make Joshua's blood boil. That night, Joshua couldn't sleep. He'd spent 40 years avoiding human connection, but Karen's story haunted him. By sunrise, he was researching American foster care statistics, and what he found made him physically sick. 391,000 children currently trapped in the U.S. foster care system. Karen and Lila weren't anomalies. They were statistics in a broken machine that destroys families daily. Sibling separation happens to 43% of children entering care. 43%. Nearly half of all kids lose their brothers and sisters on top of losing their parents. The Fostering Connections to Success Act of 2008 specifically prohibits separating siblings unless absolutely necessary, but bureaucrats ignore federal law when it's convenient. Karen and Lila's case was textbook institutional failure. Wyoming's Department of Family Services had 17 different opportunities to keep them together and failed every single time. Grandma Rose's custody petition was denied because her 2-bedroom house didn't have separate rooms for the girls. Never mind that they'd shared a room their entire lives and preferred it that way. The housing violation was code for "we don't want to do the paperwork." Uncle Mike in Montana was rejected because his ranch was too remote for adequate educational opportunities. The same ranch where their father had grown up, learned responsibility, and become a successful foreman. But it was 4 miles from the nearest elementary school, so case closed. The most qualified applicant was their former neighbor, Janet Kowalski, who'd helped with homework and babysat for 3 years. She knew their routines, their fears, their favorite foods. The girls trusted her completely. Her application was denied because she wasn't a blood relative, despite federal guidelines prioritizing emotional bonds over genetic connections. Meanwhile, the Hendersons in Cheyenne, the family abusing Leela, had been investigated twice for child endangerment. Both investigations were closed without action due to insufficient evidence. Translation: Leela's bruises weren't photographed properly, and 8-year-olds don't make credible witnesses against adults. The legal system wasn't protecting children, it was processing them like inventory. Karen had been fighting alone for 4 months with no legal representation. Public defenders were overwhelmed with caseloads averaging 250 children each. Private attorneys cost $500 per hour minimum. Legal aid societies had waiting lists stretching 18 months. So a 9-year-old girl was researching custody law in the Denver Public Library, between work shifts, printing court documents, with quarters scrounged from couch cushions, and filing motions in handwriting because she couldn't afford a computer. The mathematics were devastating. 28% of children in foster care never reunite with siblings. 68% age out of the system without permanent families. Only 12% attend college, compared to 87% of children who never enter care. But the cruelest statistic was this: 41% of foster children become homeless within 18 months of aging out. The system designed to protect them was systematically destroying their futures. Joshua discovered that Colorado alone had 6,000 children in care, with only 42 caseworkers managing their cases. Each worker was responsible for 143 kids, an impossible caseload that guaranteed neglect. Visits that should happen monthly were delayed for 6 months. Court hearings were postponed indefinitely. Sibling visits were cancelled due to transportation issues. The underground economy Karen had joined was thriving because the legal economy abandoned these kids completely. Hundreds of minors working illegal jobs, living in cars, sleeping in abandoned buildings, all because bureaucrats prioritized procedure over people. Most heartbreaking, the average time in foster care was 21 months. Karen and Lila had been separated for only 4 months, and the trauma was already destroying them. 4 months felt like forever to children who'd never spent a night apart. The federal government spent $32 billion annually on foster care services, yet outcomes kept getting worse. More money, more bureaucracy, more children falling through cracks that had widened into chasms. If this makes you angry, share this video, because awareness is the first step to change. While Karen was fighting for her family, Joshua was about to make a decision that would shock his entire board of directors. The $847 was never an issue. Joshua transferred the money for Grandma Rose's treatment before Karen finished asking. But what happened next surprised them both. Karen didn't disappear. She kept showing up at 2 a.m., not because she needed to clean offices, but because she had questions. Smart questions that made Joshua's corporate advisors look like amateurs. Why do you use debt financing for property acquisitions instead of equity partnerships? Karen asked one Tuesday night, perched in the leather chair across from his desk, the chair nobody had sat in for 3 years. Joshua found himself actually explaining business strategy to a 9-year-old who absorbed complex financial concepts like a sponge. Debt is cheaper than giving up ownership stakes. But what about cash flow risks during economic downturns? Your 2020 quarterly reports showed occupancy drops of 32%. If you'd had equity partners sharing the losses instead of fixed debt payments, you wouldn't have needed to lay off 400 employees. He stared at her. Those layoffs had kept him awake for months, but his board had insisted they were necessary. Karen had just identified the strategic error that could have prevented them. You read my 2020 reports. I read everything you leave on your desk. Your handwriting is messy, but your analysis is usually solid. Karen grinned. Usually. For the first time in years, Joshua laughed. Actually laughed. Their meetings became routine. Karen would finish her legitimate cleaning jobs, then arrive at Horizon headquarters for what she called business school. Joshua found himself looking forward to these sessions more than board meetings or investor calls. He taught her advanced mathematics, market analysis, and corporate law. She taught him about resilience, creativity, and seeing opportunities where others saw obstacles. You know what your hotel lobbies are missing? Karen asked one night, sketching on the back of financial reports. Play areas for kids. Not just toys in corners, but actual interactive spaces. When families travel, kids get bored, parents get stressed, and stress makes people leave bad reviews. Joshua studied her rough drawings. The insurance liability would be enormous. So would the competitive advantage. Families would choose Horizon properties over competitors just for the kid-friendly amenities. Higher occupancy rates, longer stays, more positive word-of-mouth marketing. Karen looked up from her sketching. Plus, happy kids mean repeat customers. Families vacation annually, and brand loyalty starts early. She was absolutely right. Within a week, Joshua had architects designing family-friendly lobby concepts for 12 properties. The sterile corporate environment began changing in subtle ways. Karen brought homemade cookies from Grandma Rose's kitchen, the first non-catered food ever consumed in Joshua's office. She left children's books on his coffee table, claiming she needed quiet spaces to study. Her backpack and school supplies occupied the corner where no personal items had ever existed. Most remarkably, Karen treated Joshua like a normal person. She didn't defer to his wealth or status. When he made mistakes in calculations, she corrected him without hesitation. When he suggested impractical ideas, she explained why they wouldn't work. When he seemed tired or stressed, she made him tea and insisted he take breaks. "You're the smartest businessman I've ever met," Karen told him one night, "but you're terrible at taking care of yourself." Nobody had cared about Joshua's well-being in decades. His employees feared him. His board members competed with him. His few acquaintances wanted favors from him. Karen just wanted him to be healthy and happy. In return, Joshua gave Karen something she'd never had, a father figure who believed in her potential. He helped with homework, explained difficult concepts, and listened to her fears about Leela without judgment. He celebrated her academic achievements and encouraged her dreams of someday attending college. The relationship healed wounds neither had acknowledged. Joshua's office walls, metaphorical and physical, started crumbling. He began taking lunch breaks, sleeping regular hours, even smiling during video conferences. Karen found stability in intellectual stimulation she'd craved since her parents died. The executive suite, that once felt like a tomb, now hosted homework sessions, strategy discussions, and genuine human connection. Karen's laughter echoed through halls that had known only silence. Joshua's protective instincts awakened after 40 years of dormancy. They were becoming family. But their friendship was about to face its biggest test. The Horizon Hospitality Board meeting on December 15, 2023, started like every other monthly gathering. Quarterly projections, expansion plans, standard corporate agenda items, until Joshua dropped a bombshell that left 12 seasoned executives speechless. "I'm announcing the Horizon Hope Initiative, a $50 million fund dedicated to reforming America's foster care system." Silence. Then chaos. $50 million. Board member James Peterson's voice cracked. "That's nearly 12% of our annual profit margin." "Have you lost your mind?" CFO Margaret Liu leaned forward. "Our shareholders expect growth, not charity experiments." "This isn't charity," Joshua replied calmly. "It's a strategic investment in human capital with measurable returns." What they didn't know was that Karen had been sitting in on these planning sessions for weeks, contributing ideas that would revolutionize child welfare services. Her suggestions weren't emotional appeals, they were business solutions to systemic problems. The current foster care system fails because it's reactive instead of proactive, Karen had explained during one of their late-night strategy sessions. You can't fix broken families after they're already destroyed. You need early intervention systems that prevent separation in the first place. Her first innovation was the 247 sibling hotline, a GPS-tracked emergency response system that could dispatch trained social workers within 2 hours of any separation crisis. Traditional child protective services took an average of 48 hours to respond to emergency calls. Karen's system reduced that to less than 2 hours. "Technology can solve communication problems," she told Joshua. "Kids in foster care don't have reliable ways to contact siblings or report abuse. Give them secure smartphones with direct access to counselors, and you eliminate the isolation that makes them vulnerable." The second breakthrough was blockchain-based kinship verification. Traditional background checks took weeks or months, during which children remained in temporary placements. Karen's system created digital family trees with verified relationships, allowing qualified relatives to gain custody within days instead of months. "Bureaucracy is just slow data processing," Karen had said with 9-year-old wisdom. "Speed up the data, speed up the decisions." The board's resistance was immediate and fierce. "We're a hospitality company, not a social service agency," argued Peterson. "This will tank our stock price. Our insurance costs will skyrocket," Leo added. "And what about liability issues?" Joshua had anticipated every objection. "Our consumer research shows that 73% of customers prefer companies with strong social responsibility initiatives." The family-friendly hotel modifications Karen suggested increased occupancy rates by 11% in our test markets. Corporate responsibility isn't just moral, it's profitable. The Fosterpreneur program was Karen's most ambitious idea. Instead of warehousing teenagers aging out of care, the initiative provided microgrants and mentorship for starting small businesses. Former foster youth, who typically became homeless statistics, instead became entrepreneurs with sustainable income streams. Foster kids learn independence early, Karen had explained. They already have survival skills. Give them business training and startup capital, and they'll outperform most traditional entrepreneurs because they're motivated by necessity, not just opportunity. The corporate world reacted with skepticism bordering on hostility. Business journals questioned Joshua's mental health. Competitors circled like vultures, expecting Horizon's stock to plummet. Shareholders demanded explanations for the reckless spending. Grant's Bleeding Heart initiative will bankrupt the company within 2 years, predicted Wall Street analyst Robert Cruz. Hospitality investors want returns, not social experiments. But Karen's data-driven approach began producing results faster than anyone expected. The first quarter metrics were encouraging. The second quarter metrics were impressive. By the third quarter, Horizon's stock had actually increased by 17%. The family-friendly hotel modifications Karen suggested weren't just popular, they were revolutionary. Families extended stays when children were happy. Positive reviews increased booking rates. Corporate clients chose Horizon properties for family-friendly conference venues. The foster-friendly hiring program filled critical staffing shortages with highly motivated employees. Former foster youth brought unique perspectives to customer service, having experienced genuine hardship themselves. They connected with guests on emotional levels that increased customer satisfaction scores across all demographics. The Trauma-Informed Design initiative transformed hotel environments to be calming for guests with PTSD, anxiety, or sensory processing disorders. What started as accommodations for former foster youth became premium amenities that attracted wellness-focused travelers. Most importantly, the measurable impact on children's lives was staggering. Within 18 months, sibling separations in participating states dropped from 43% to 11%. Foster home recidivism rates fell from 68% to 29%. College enrollment among former foster youth increased from 12% to 38%. The business community began paying attention. Harvard Business School requested case studies. The United Nations invited Joshua to speak about corporate social responsibility. Forbes featured Karen as their youngest ever business strategy consultant. "We didn't just change the foster care system," Joshua told shareholders at the annual meeting. "We proved that moral leadership and financial success aren't mutually exclusive. They're synergistic." Subscribe and ring that notification bell if you want to see more stories of people using their wealth to change lives. The results were beyond anyone's wildest expectations. By 2025, the man who once slept alone in a corporate tower had become Papa Joshua to over 1,200 children across America. The transformation wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. The workaholic billionaire, who hadn't taken a vacation in 8 years now, hosted weekly reading nights at Horizon-funded group homes. Children who'd never known stability found comfort in his consistent presence. He learned their names, remembered their birthdays, and celebrated their achievements like a proud father. Mr. Grant reads voices for all the characters, 10-year-old Michael told a documentary crew. He makes the dragons sound scary and the princesses sound brave. He's the best storyteller in the world. Joshua's psychological evaluation in 2025 showed remarkable changes from his 2022 assessment. The borderline antisocial tendencies had been replaced with what psychologists term nurturance competence, the ability to provide emotional support and guidance. His therapist noted that caring for vulnerable children had awakened dormant parenting instincts. Healing Karen and Leela's trauma helped heal my own, Joshua reflected during a Harvard Business School interview. I spent 40 years running from the abandoned child inside me. These kids taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the foundation of genuine strength. Karen's evolution was equally remarkable. The frightened girl working 3 jobs to save her grandmother had become a confident advocate speaking at Senate hearings and university conferences. At 11 years old, she possessed the poise of seasoned diplomats and the analytical skills of experienced consultants. Her recent TEDx talk, The Economics of Empathy, drew standing ovations from audiences worldwide. Real wealth isn't measured in bank accounts, but in how many lives you help rewrite before the final chapter, she declared, receiving over 2 million views within the first week. Grandma Rose recovered completely from her cancer treatments, and Leela was safely home with them in a beautiful house Joshua purchased in their old Wyoming neighborhood. The sisters were inseparable again, making up for lost time with adventures and shared dreams of the future. But the most stunning transformation occurred within Horizon Hospitality itself. The corporate culture that once prioritized profit margins above people became a model for compassionate capitalism. Employee satisfaction scores reached all-time highs. Turnover rates dropped to industry lows. Productivity increased across all departments. When you treat workers like family, they perform like owners, explained Human Resources Director Janet Kowalski. Yes, the same neighbor who'd originally tried to adopt Karen and Leela, now hired as Horizon's expert on family-centered employment policies. The foster-friendly hiring program had evolved into a comprehensive support network. Former foster youth weren't just employees, they were mentored leaders, promoted rapidly through management ranks. Their unique perspectives on resilience and adaptability proved invaluable in hospitality management. Guest satisfaction surveys revealed something unprecedented. Customers could sense the authentic warmth in Horizon properties. Staff members who'd experienced genuine care radiated that energy to visitors. The company's Net Promoter Score, measuring customer loyalty, increased by 43 points. Financial performance exceeded all projections. The Bleeding Heart initiative that critics predicted would bankrupt the company had generated record profits for 3 consecutive quarters. Horizon's stock price had doubled since the program launched. Wall Street analyst Robert Cruz, who'd predicted disaster, published a humbling retraction. Grant didn't just prove that moral leadership and financial success can coexist. He demonstrated that compassionate business practices create competitive advantages that traditional profit-focused strategies cannot match. The lonely billionaire who once lived in isolation now presided over an extended family of thousands, proving that the greatest return on investment comes from investing in human potential. Today, Karen Bennett stands before the Senate Finance Committee, no longer a frightened child janitor but a confident advocate for America's most vulnerable children. At 11 years old, she's the youngest person ever to testify about Title EV funding reforms, speaking with authority that commands respect from seasoned legislators. Senators, the current system spends $32 billion annually, while 43% of siblings remain separated, Karen testified last month. The Horizon Hope model has reduced that number to 11% at half the cost per child. Mathematics doesn't lie, compassionate efficiency works. Her testimony has already influenced 3 major legislative proposals. The Sibling Protection Act, directly inspired by Karen's recommendations, passed the House with bipartisan support. The Kinship Priority Amendment streamlined relative placement procedures. The Foster Youth Business Development Act provides federal matching funds for entrepreneurship programs. The impact continues expanding exponentially. Horizon Hope Initiative has now rescued over 1,400 children from dangerous situations. Partner organizations in 12 states have adopted Karen's technological solutions. International delegations from Canada, Australia, and the United Kingdom are implementing similar programs. Every month brings new success stories. Former foster youth starting successful businesses. Siblings reunited after years of separation. Grandparents finally gaining custody of beloved grandchildren. Each victory proves that systemic change is possible when business leaders choose humanity over pure profit. Joshua still reads bedtime stories at group homes every Tuesday night. Karen still visits his office, though now she arrives through the front door as an official consultant. Lila excels in her Wyoming elementary school, surrounded by friends and family who love her unconditionally. The transformation from that November night in 2023 continues reverberating through communities across America. What began as one billionaire discovering one child working illegally has become a movement, reshaping how society treats its most vulnerable members. Karen's words from her TEDx talk echo in boardrooms and congressional hearings worldwide. Real wealth isn't measured in bank accounts, but in how many lives you help rewrite before the final chapter. That philosophy has inspired countless other business leaders to examine their own potential for creating meaningful change. The question isn't whether you have billions of dollars to donate, it's whether you have the courage to see human potential in unexpected places. What story will your life tell? Let us know in the comments how you're going to make a difference. And don't forget to check out our next extraordinary story of transformation, redemption, and the power of unlikely friendships to change the world.